Got to get myself positioned here. My clicker's not working, so I have to get up, move back and forth to turn my camera on. I'm wearing my glitzy dress. Well, it's not a dress, it's a silvery top. Looks just like a maternity top. In fact, it's made more like the ones I wore many, many years ago. And I'd be willing to loan it to one or two of these mothers-to-be that like to have their tummies hanging out, which is just not my idea of modesty. So anyway, so much for that. So I'm wearing my red glitzy glasses too. This is to represent Christmas. And behind me, well, you can't see much of anything, but you see my pretty picture I got at Goodwill. I tell you, I love that picture, and it's such a beautiful frame that, and of course, when you get something at a bargain price, you like to brag about it a little bit. First, I want to start off with those of you every now and then who question about my books that I've written. I want to show you now. That way you can see what they look like and you can order them if you please. Now, first of all, this is my cookbook. As you can see, it says, "Make mine the Blue Plate Special." Has my name right on the bottom. Now, take a good look at that in case you have interest in it. And that pretty bowl of vegetable soup is what I made. I took a picture of it and I said, I want this on the front cover in the blue willow bowl. Okay, that's the first book. This one is the first one I wrote. Wait till you hear this one. That's a picture of the house where I grew up. My granddaughter painted the picture as much as she could recall from a photograph. And there's a little swing on the end of the porch that you can see, and we spent many, many hours on that front porch reminiscing and telling stories. So, if you like this, this is a book of 100 true stories written by me, that being the first publication. The next one, I had more stories to tell. So, this is what I wrote. Hold it, Lord, hold it. I'm not finished yet. My daughter suggested that title because I still think I have a few more years left and I want to tell more stories. So, hold it, Lord, hold it, till I get my stories told. These are all three on Amazon if you would like to order them. Now, I'll let that be. Christmas time. Actually, I'm going to go way back. Now, this is not a Christmas story, but the thing is, I was married a week before Christmas in 1954. My boyfriend was in the Coast Guard. He was going to be finishing up his 3-year term in October of that year. And we were going to get married in December. So I said, Mama, you've got to teach me how to cook. I've got to know how to cook. Now, I had always helped her in the kitchen. You know how you salt the green beans or turn the fried potatoes or check the things in the oven, but I never cooked a meal. And so she was going to supervise each night. I was going to cook supper. Nobody was home then except her and Daddy and my younger brother. So we'd get in the kitchen, and one thing I had already mastered was meatloaf. Mama thought I made very good meatloaf. So when I would ask her, how much baking powder do I need? She said, oh, just a pinch. Mama, I don't know how much a pinch is. Then I'd ask her about the salt, just a smidgen. She had her own way of measuring, and it was very difficult for me to follow her orders. But to this day, I think I picked up on her way of measuring ingredients. I do the same thing she did. So anyway, we got married a week before Christmas. We'd been married about 2 weeks. And I decided one night, I had the ingredients, I was going to fix my first meatloaf. We lived in a rented 2-room basement apartment. The bedroom and living room was one room, and we had a big kitchen. I fixed meatloaf that night. And back then you made meatloaf with both ground chuck and sausage. Well, I didn't have quite enough ground chuck and maybe a little too much sausage, but it'll be okay. I think it'll work. So I made the meatloaf, and actually it wasn't quite as good as it should have been. And I knew that, but I didn't mention it. We're getting ready for bed that night. We have this little goldfish sitting on the table beside the bed. That little goldfish had a habit of flipping up out and out of the bowl and onto the floor, and we had to keep an eye out for it because we were afraid we might step on it. Well, we've just settled in bed, and we're lying there, and my husband says, did you throw out the rest of that meatloaf? And I said, no, why? Well, you should have. Think about it, ladies. I threw that cover back. My feet hit the floor. He was crawling after me. I didn't know if that goldfish was on the floor or not. If it was, goodbye goldfish. I headed for the kitchen, and the refrigerator was one of those on legs that had a motor on top. Now, I don't know how many of you have ever seen a refrigerator like that, but that's what we had. I reached in that refrigerator, him right behind me saying, oh, it was good, it was good, it was good. And I pulled out the platter. The platter happened to be my new Fiesta-ware long gray platter that I'd received as a wedding gift. And the meatloaf was on that platter. I grabbed that platter, I walked over to the sink. There was a large wastebasket sitting at the end of the sink. I dumped that platter of meatloaf, plate and all, into the wastebasket. My husband behind me, grabbing for it. Oh, don't throw it away, don't throw it away, it was good. He pulled it out and put it back in the refrigerator. Well, he put the plate back, but he didn't take the meatloaf out. Well, I'll tell you this. He never criticized my meatloaf again after that. He knew right then and there he'd made his biggest mistake. After 2 weeks of marriage, he had criticized my cooking. So, I'm going to go on from there to our first Christmas tree. Now, our first Christmas tree was a year later because we didn't have time to decorate. With it being a week before Christmas, we were going back home for Christmas Day that year. So a year later, we moved into another basement apartment. It happened to be 3 rooms. We didn't have any money. My husband was going to school at the University of Louisville, and I was working at the Baptist bookstore downtown Louisville, and I made just enough money to cover my bus fare to and from work and to buy my lunch at Grant's across the street. So we were getting by, and I decided I was going to have a tree. Now, if you are my age, you will remember the AMPT company carried tabletop Christmas tree. They were about 3 feet tall. I never did know if they were real trees or not, but they would have a row of them on top of shelves for people who wanted a small Christmas tree. And as I recall, those little trees cost $3. Well, $3 was about all we had to spend. And they came in a little canister at the bottom that I always figured it must have had water or something in it to keep the tree fresh. The canister was about this big around, just like a half ball. That was going to be my Christmas tree. Well, I had the kind of husband that waits to the last minute for everything. I had already decided it's going to be a blue tree. I had my 1 strand of blue lights. You know those little light bulbs about this size? You see that? Okay. Little light bulbs about that size. And there were only about 12 lights on the string. I couldn't afford any more than that. I had the icicles, 1 box of icicles, and I had 1 or 2 boxes of royal blue ornaments. They were that size, not those great big pretty ones. They were little ones because I was going to have a little tree. It wasn't going to take much. Everything on it was going to be blue. I was very pleased with the things I had already bought because I couldn't pay for any more than that. So anyway, I kept after my husband. You've got to go get our tree. They're going to sell out. Well, finally, he went to the A&P. It was only about 3 blocks from where we lived. I could have walked the distance, but I didn't want to carry a tree back in my hand. So he went to the A&P, and they were out of the tree. They'd sold every last tree they had. He came home, no trees. Well, we've got to have a tree. So he goes out, and he's looking for the live trees. Oh, he didn't have to go very far till he found a spot where they were selling the live Christmas trees. Well, the man was getting low on trees, and in those days, they sold out fast. But the trees were a lot more expensive than the ones you bought at the A&P. And he found one right at the bottom of the pile, $5. It was about 6 feet tall, skinny. It looked like Snoopy Christmas tree. He came in the door with that tree. I was never so disappointed in my life as when I looked at that big, tall, skinny stick. What was I going to do with it? It had been put on a wooden frame. Okay. He set it up in the middle of the living room. And I started pulling at those spindly little limbs, trying to stretch them, trying to make the tree look full. It was going to be an impossible project. but I had nothing else to work with. I kept working with it, and I kept pulling the light this way and that way to see if they would stretch. It's like trying to stretch a dollar, you know. And I finally got the light from the top to the bottom, very sparse. Then I got my ornaments on. It was going to take icicles, plenty of icicles, to make this tree look pretty. I got all the icicles on it. I stood back and I looked at my tree, and you know, that was probably one of the prettiest trees I ever decorated. I couldn't believe how pretty my blue Christmas tree was. So that was my first Christmas to have a Christmas tree, and I always remembered it, thinking how weird and how unpleasant my expectations were going to be until I finished the tree, and I discovered I could decorate a good-looking Christmas tree. So that Christmas turned out pretty nice after all, and I always call that my blue Christmas. So that's my story for today. It's another one of those gloomy days. I've already had my lunch, and my lunch consisted of a dessert that I tested on Thanksgiving Day. The lady that had brought it, I thought the dessert, it was a pudding type dessert that called for Ritz crackers. And I can't remember what else was it. It was the coconut pudding, and it called for ice cream. I liked it so well. So a couple of days ago, I made that dessert myself, and I hate to say I'm going to be putting back on that 2 pounds I just lost. But that's okay. As soon as that dessert's over, I can start back, lose the 2 pounds again. I hope all of you are going to have a good Christmas. I hope you have good Christmas stories to tell. Some are bad, some are funny, some are scary, but I love them all. And I have I have 2 friends who play Santa Claus. They are wonderful Santa Clauses. I've got pictures of me and Jan with one of the Santa Claus. If you will check, he has advertised my cookbook on YouTube. You can find him and his wife. She plays Mrs. Santa, and they are advertising my book on YouTube, and that was just a sweet thing he was doing for me. I can't thank him enough for that, because he did such a wonderful job, and he looks like the real Santa. And as far as I'm concerned, he is. So you have a good day today. Go on Amazon, check out my books, and I think you will enjoy ordering them. I have to finish this though with yesterday. I was invited to a luncheon yesterday. One of my neighbors, very sweet lady. There were 8 of us ladies there. She had the table set so beautifully. She had her china with the gold rim plates, and her crystal also had gold rims. And we had soup and salad, and it was very delicious. And some of these ladies I did not know. The others I have known several years. But we learned so much about each other just sitting around the table talking. And it was like creating new friendships. We should be doing things like that now. We should invite the neighbors in, or a friend down the street, or someone that we just met at church, just for tea, just for a cup of coffee, or even a cup of cider. I have a really good cider recipe, but it's not really a recipe. It's just the spices that I put in the apple cider that make it so good. And I always buy it at Christmas time. So you have a good day. Do you like my picture back here? That's a Goodwill picture. Isn't it beautiful? I just wanted to point it out to you because I like it so well. And I'm gonna let you go now. If you haven't had lunch, I hope you've got something good, because I'm tired of eating my leftovers. I'm gonna have to go to the grocery and find something new to fix. You have a good day. It's gonna be a good day for all of us, I hope. Thank you. Keep watching.